The local front, we have so much news coming out from the corporate front. Let's start off with Sasol. Came out with a trading update yesterday and saying that headline earnings per share is now going to decrease between 32 and 37%, and that's from the previously forecast 40 to 50% decline. So far better there, but we know exactly what's happened to the oil price, and the rand has also strengthened. So what sense are you making of this?
Exactly. I think, and that initial trading update was towards the third week of June and that was in obviously their second half of their financial year. So I'm interested to know how it varied so much over 2 weeks. I think it had to do on mark-to-market of inventories, plus also what you've seen in the price over the last month or so, is the price has increased in line with an oil price which hit a record for the year on Friday. Interesting though, it's a tale of two complete halves, because their first half of the year, as you would have heard in the insert, that Angola is experiencing the same type of problems. A record oil price of $147 a barrel, all the way back down to 35 inside of the same 6 months. I mean, we forget how wild that 6 months really was. And from there it's doubled, but it's still half of what it was last year. I think in terms of what Sasol need to do now is they're obviously going to be looking towards demand in the future and build in places such as India, China, where they've got projects that they're thinking.
Exactly. I wanted to get to that point. China and India and building up capacity in those regions, a wise move, would you say, right now?
Well, you must remember that those two countries specifically have large coal reserves, and that's where Sasol's technology is going to be so key. Although, as I can understand it, in India, it's not exactly, it's probably the worst of the economic of the 29 states in India where to operate. But that state's obviously welcoming it because they feel almost neglected. It's in the top northeastern part of India. In China, it seems like, they're very keen to utilize their technology. And Sasol are the best at doing this on this sort of scale globally. So it's a good one to own, even if you just want to play on the oil price, but also in the longer term, you're going to see volumes increase, and that comes from places such as Qatar, and then steadily through the next decade in India, in China.
So at these levels, not looking very expensive, would you say?
No, I wouldn't say, because back of the matchbox type calculations suggest in the region of 25 rands for the full year, which only suggests 3 rands for the second half, and that tells you how wild it was. So it doesn't look overly expensive at this level, and if oil prices can maintain these types of levels and tick higher as global demand improves, then Sasol looks attractive.
Impala Platinum came out with a trading update earlier in the week, expected to see results today, and they said headline earnings per share expected to be between R9.80 and R10.20, and that's from R20.65 a year ago. A big difference there, but we've got to appreciate as well that the platinum price has come under significant pressure since then. Absolutely.
And the world's changed. Volumes, I think what investors will probably look at is try and see whether or not volumes have maintained a production. And I think ultimately the reasons why you buy Impala is it's a green stock. It's an environmentally friendly stock. There's lots of industrial usages for platinum outside of the auto cats, which account for half of platinum production, platinum usage right now, and increasingly jewelry demand. So it's got quite a nice spread, but mostly.
You've always liked this stock as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It does look a little bit stretched at these levels, but the price is telling you something in the future. Because on these results, the stock will be trading on 20 times historical earnings. So people will start to ask themselves the questions, well, this looks fairly expensive. I think the key for Impala in the long term is Zimbabwe.
It's going to be quite interesting to see what plays out there, actually. Zimplats. Wage negotiations on the go right now. Is that a concern for you?
Looked like communications breakdown to me, because initially National Union of Mine Workers said, okay, we're not going to strike, on the basis that there seemed to be some sort of return and resumption of talks between Impala but it just seemed specific at one mine, at the Impala mine in Rustenburg. So I was a bit confused as to why there'd been a communication breakdown between the National Union of Mine Workers and the workers actually on the ground who stopped working. So I don't know, I think it's gathered momentum, and now I guess both parties are scrambling.
MTN, Bharti, Airtel, MTN said to come out with results today, and a lot of talk about whether the deal is actually going to go through. Extended talks once again set to end at the end of this month, and it's quite interesting to see a lot of play between whether they're going to be putting a sweetener on the table or not, and it seems that they're not going to be doing that. On the other end, we know that there's a lot of people willing to fund this merger. What sense are you making of this?
I saw in the FT 2 days ago that Bharti actually have secured their finances. They've secured their 5 billion line of credit from various suitors. I was interested in the makeup of the people providing finance because it varied from Singapore-based banks to Hong Kong-based banks, even an Australian bank, and then a couple of the usual suspects in Citi and Barclays. And a nice mix of, they're obviously spreading their risk around there too, but Bharti seems to have their funding in line, and I guess maybe we'll see something after these MTN results, which aren't going to look that good, to be perfectly honest.
Well, they're saying discussions are going to be about administrative issues right now. What do you think these administrative issues might be?
You must remember the two businesses are not exactly the same. Interconnect fees in India are quite low, so there's quite high call volumes, whereas here, I think in Africa, it will mostly be around data, and I think that's where they can help Bharti in the short run, as well as pushing text messages and that type. So they're not completely the same businesses, even though they provide the same services. They differ slightly at the fringes. I think MTN shareholders actually are getting a better deal at this juncture, but the way India perhaps looks at having exposure to Africa is saying, well, we understand the dynamics of this market, relatively poor, but finding their base.
MTN, as you said, might not come out with good results. We had a trading update as well earlier in the week. Do you think that the bad news has perhaps been priced in, or are shareholders going to be in for a shock?
No, I think the prices did relatively little yesterday. And remember, it was the previous session just before the closing auction, and we didn't see a big sell-off. So I think there's some sort of floor as well as a ceiling on MTN. MTN, after these initial announcements, has shot up to a level that's maintained in the mid-120s to 130. So they've been trading between 125 and 130 for a long time now in anticipation of this deal announcement.
And if the deal doesn't go through?
Well, you would suspect that the MTN share price would fall away, which again says to me that the MTN shareholders are getting a better deal.